Yeah, welcome to the Making of Me podcast, where we explore the moments that shape who we have become. Today, I'm joined by Joseph Bolton, a celebrate author and storyteller behind Old Grandmother Trees, known for capturing culture, history, and extraordinaries in everyday life through his folktale. It's really a pleasure having you on the show, Joseph.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to be here tonight.
Yeah, thank you. So, Joseph, what were some of those challenges that shaped you into who you are today?
Well, yeah, my mother's family was French Canadian, originally from Canada, and I was always curious about my family. Where did they come from in Canada? Who were my great grandparents, my and their family, and how long were they in Canada? And learning about that culture was always fascinated by it. And then, as an adult, I was able to research my family tree in Canada, and I discovered a very remarkable story. And so I was able to make a tree with all my ancestors in Canada, but I also found Native American ancestors as well as French. And Old Grandmother's Tree is a story of my Algonquin great 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 grandmother. Her name is Mrimete Wiawagwe, and her remarkable story is the inspiration for the Old Grandmother's Tree. And in fact, she is the old grandmother
Yeah.
of that old grandmother's tree story. So that's kind of the inspiration. And so her story began, was actually very well documented when she was 22 years old. She was a young woman married with a husband who was also Algonquin like her. They had two small children and they lived in Trois-Rivières in Quebec. Mohawks came up from the south, from New York, and raided their village. And her husband was killed in the attack, and her two small children were kidnapped, and she never saw them again. So at 22, still a young woman, she lost everything. She lost her husband, and she lost her children, and she never knew what happened to her children. So, and 5 years later, she married a French settler named Pierre Cauque, and then Pierre and Rimete Awagwe, they became my ancestors. And at the end of her life, when she died, when she was 68 years old in 1699, her parish priest in Trois-Rivières wrote of her, and he said, Marie Mate Wiawagwe lived a full life with dignity, respect, and love, a courageous and loving Algonquin woman. And it's a very beautiful but short
Yeah.
eulogy. And so between that eulogy and the event that happened as when she was a young woman and she lost her entire family, that had to be an incredible life and how she rebuilt that life. She had 7 children with her second husband. She has today thousands of descendants in Canada and the United States and perhaps other places in the world. And, so that is her legacy. And so I retold her story, but I didn't just tell it in a factual way. I used the language of a folk tale. And that style. And in that reimagined world where I tell her story, it's a reimagined Quebec with folklore style magic and trickster animal characters inspired by Native American stories are also part of that world. So it's real history, but it's a little bit of a fantasy. I took real people and their real story and I retold it in the language of a folk tale. And I did that because folk tales are universal. Every culture
Yeah.
has folk tales. And when you read a folk tale, no matter where it is in the world, even though each folk tale is shaped by the particular culture and the environment that the folk tale came from, there is a lot of commonality because folk tales talk about how we live as human beings and how we live well as human beings and live virtuous lives. So that's why I chose that language to retell her story.
Wow, amazing. Also, growing up, getting to learn about those particular stories and putting it in, incorporating folktales in between it. How does it impact you, and how does it impact how you lead, and how does it impact how you see life?
Well, I think that I find her story very inspiring in the sense that as tough as my life may feel sometimes, and we all go through challenges in life, I look at her and the challenge that she faced. And she lived in a time where there wasn't the support system that we have today that we take for granted in our societies. So the fact that she was able to overcome this great challenge and tragedy in her life and to rebuild it is an inspiration for me. It reminds me, no matter how bad it may feel for myself, I have inspiration of my own ancestors on how to overcome those challenges.
Wow. Thank you so much, Joseph. So, Joseph, why did you select is it Motue Migweku as the protagonist, and
Yes.
what make her inspiring?
Why I inspired her? I chose her because, number one, first of all, we are very fortunate that we know a lot about her life compared to other ancestors we
Yeah.
had from the 1600s because it's just very well documented. But because we know about these two events, she had tragedy as a young woman, and then when she passed away as an older woman, she was lauded as being a woman of dignity, respect, and love and courage. So there has to be a
Yeah.
story in between those two events. And so as the storyteller, I reimagine what it was like for her at the beginning, and I also like to reimagine what it was like for her at the end. And that ending, the ending of her life, will be retold in the fourth book of the series that'll come out next year.
Amazing. Amazing. So, did you base any of your tricksters, animal characters, or real peoples in your life?
Well, first of all, they are inspired by trickster characters that are known in mythologies throughout the world. Every mythology has trickster characters like that, troublemakers. They're not evil characters, but they sometimes cause trouble. And so that was the first part of it. But I think that the characters themselves sometimes were based on people that I know. For example, Mewin the bear and his brother Azaban the raccoon are based on myself and my own brother, and their mischief is based on things that my brother and I did when we were children. So that is kind of inspired. And there's also a character named Uncle McKeish the turtle, and he is kind of, I would say in some ways he's inspired by myself since I am an uncle and I have nephews and nieces, but he's also inspired by my uncles and aunts who are much older than me and are much elderly now. So Uncle McKeish is like a stand-in. Sometimes I feel like I use my voice is definitely in some of the things that Uncle McKeish says to his nephews and nieces, and also to his nephews as they speak to him.
Yeah, amazing. Amazing. It's really lovely. So, what theme do your book actually explore, and why are they very important?
What theme?
Yeah.
I think the theme is definitely resiliency. I think it's remembering our ancestors.
Mm.
I think it's important to remember to keep in mind that our stories, the story of ourselves, did not begin when we were born.
Yeah.
We are literally the continuation of the story of our ancestors. So, I am a continuation of Rimete Wiawakwe's story. Her story did not end when she died, but it continued on through her children and grandchildren and so on to all her descendants. So that's part of the biggest theme of the story. And also, I wrote this book in a way that the book can be enjoyed by many adults, but it is also a book that you can be comfortable reading to your children and your grandchildren.
Wow, amazing. Amazing. I think it's just lovely being that you just make reference to the fact that the theme of the book is on resilience, to remembering our ancestors. And I think stories around resilience is very key. Being that, yes, it's very lovely. Just imagine more like having a grandmother old, long ago who actually more like through her resilience was able to change a whole lot of things. And it's really lovely being that you could actually have her as a mental model to say, if she was to be here, what would she have done differently? And yeah,
Yes.
it's really lovely. So how has your storytelling evolved since you started writing?
Well, my own story style is every author, I think, has their own style. Some people will sit down and say, I'm going to write 1,000 words today, or they write an outline of the story, or they plan it out. For me, it's a little different. I see the story in my mind like a movie, like a film that plays in my mind over and over again. And it kind of gets tweaked a little bit and changed a little bit every time I replay it in my mind. And eventually it gets to the point where it feels ready and I'll sit in front of the computer and it doesn't matter what time of the day it is. When it's ready, it's ready. I sit down and I type it all out till I get a first draft of the story. And yes, so that's my style. And I don't really plan. I just kind of set the situation for my characters and I place them in this situation. And then I watch how they react. And then I write that down. And that becomes the story.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much, Joseph. So, how do you balance historical accuracy with creative storytelling? Or
The story? Well, the books are fully illustrated. There's like between the 3 volumes that are existing right now, I think there's around 600 full color illustrations. And while there's a lot of it that is fantastic, the trickster animal characters, for example, and some magic, the artist and I, whose name is Natasha, we did a lot of research where we researched the clothing that people wore during the 1600s in Canada and the homes that they lived in. And that's how we kind of create a more realism of the setting. So accuracy research to make it believable certainly was part of my research as well.
yeah, amazing. Thank you, Joseph. So, finally, Joseph, what advice will you give to someone looking forward to telling their cultural rich and meaningful stories?
Okay, I would say the first thing you need to do is you need to talk to your elders and not just
Mm,
small talk. You need to reach back to your elders and you get your stories. I think one of the things you learn when you get to be older, or at least that you realize when you are older, is that you finally will understand what the questions you should have asked your elders when they were with you,
yeah,
when you were younger. But you don't know those questions necessarily when you're younger. When you're older, you understand what to ask, but it's too late because they're gone.
yeah.
So the first thing I would say is collect the stories of your elders and appreciate the culture. The culture is a gift. It's not something to shy away from or run away from or think it doesn't have a purpose. It does have a purpose.
We don't allow stories that talk to your elders, get to know what they do different and what they feel about it. Yes, amazing.
Hmm.
So, Joseph, for those who actually want to learn more about you, get more about your resources, get your book, and reach out to you for one or two things, how can they reach out to you and where is the best platform?
I think the best way to reach out to me is go to my website first, and that's oldgrandmotherstree.com. And there's no apostrophe in there. It's just oldgrandmotherstree.com, written as one word. And in there, you'll find a link that you can send me emails to. And also, you will find a link to buying the books on Amazon. That's where they're for sale. And there's also a character Wikipedia. So it has a description of all the characters that are in the book,
Yeah, amazing.
and as well as my biography and the biography of the artist as well.
Wow, amazing. Thank you so much, Joseph. Definitely. The link is going to be added to the show, oldgrandmother3.com.
Oh, grandmothers,
Yeah,
grandmother, S at the end of grandmothers.
okay, oldgrandmothers3.com.
Tree.
Yeah, tree.com.
Yes,
Yeah, so
that's it.
definitely it's going to be added to the show notes. Yeah, Joseph, thank you for sharing your journey and your insight. This truly reflects the making of me, being that, yes, digging into the ancestors, getting to know what they did different during their time. And yeah, it's really lovely having you on the show.
Okay, thank you. I'm very, very happy to have been here.